up, everybody? Welcome back to John's Fantasy Football Show. I'm Jared. That's John. We're here to talk about fantasy football. Everyone, breathe in and breathe out because you just made it through the first major bye week of the season. Hopefully you won. I didn't. John, did you win the bye week?
Oh, yeah, I did. I won in all four of my leagues, so I made it.
Of course, I had Dak Prescott was out. Najee Harris was out. All my big guys were out. So I was basically screwed from the jump. We got a full show on hand for you guys today. We have week 7 reactions, fantasy football strategies, and as always, the week 8 predictions. So let's not waste any of your time. Let's move into the week 7 reactions. John, the topic, are players trending upward or trending downward? So I'm going to name some players. You're going to tell me if they're trending up or trending down. Maybe think about dropping them or trading them. So the first one is the number 1 receiver in Houston, Brandin Cooks. Is he trending up or trending down?
Brandin Cooks is trending up, and I've seen a lot of people on TikTok talking about Cooks and telling people to trade for him, and I agree with that. I think he's going to have a better second half of the season than the first half. We saw with Tyrod Taylor at the helm at the beginning of the season. Cooks started out the year with 18 points in the first game, 22.8 in the second game, and then 20.7 fantasy points in the third game. So he was really good to start the year, but then since then, in the last 4 games, he hasn't hit 20 fantasy points in any of those 4 games. So this week, Tyrod Taylor seems like he's going to come back, and getting Taylor back is really going to help this offense. Now, we saw Mark Ingram leave for the Saints. Mark Ingram got traded back to the Saints. So now that leaves David Johnson and Phillip Lindsay left in Houston. So I expect them to get a little bit more carries, but it's a big upgrade for Cooks. So definitely, if you have him, don't really try to accept any trades for him unless you're getting a good deal, because you got to know that Tyrod is coming back, and that's going to help Cooks. He's a solid flex play and could push for wide receiver 2 numbers moving forward, as long as he's not matched up with Ramsey every week.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about a past wide receiver 1. Maybe not this time. Antonio Brown. Now, I believe he's coming off an injury. Is he available next week, as early as next week?
So, yeah, we saw last time he played on Thursday night. And then last week against, the Bears, that's who they played. He wasn't playing because of an ankle injury. And so we were like, oh, that's a little weird. He had 10 days off to rest, and he still didn't play. And then on Wednesday, when he went to practice, he didn't practice, and actually he was spotted using crutches. So it's a really bad situation for Antonio Brown. So he's trending down. You don't know. Nobody even knows. He didn't practice Wednesday. He didn't practice Thursday. He's limited, or he was deemed doubtful for the game Sunday against New Orleans. He's most likely not going to play that. And nobody really knows what's going on with his ankle. It could be another week. It could be another 5 weeks. We don't really know. So if you have Antonio Brown, I mean, you could try to trade him now before he gets ruled out for like a month. You could try to trade him now while people think he's only going to be out for a week, or you could just hold on to him. But you got to try to find other plans at receiver, because if you had Brown, you were probably relying on him a lot. So try to look elsewhere and maybe try to trade him if you can, because this is a bad situation. It's kind of similar to Waller. Waller obviously only missed 1 game so far. Brown seems like he's going to miss 2. But those injuries, Waller also has an ankle injury, so you got to monitor those things. And using crutches on the practice field is not a good sign for Brown.
Yeah, I'm gonna pair these next two together because they are on the same team. Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic. J.D., man, I thought he was gonna have a big game, but Gibson came out, he out touched him, and McKissic got like 5 or 6 points for me. So what are we doing with this running back duo here?
It's really tough. I think if I had to say trending up, trending down, I would say Gibson's trending down and McKissic is trending up. I think I talked about this before, but I'm worried that Gibson has had this shin injury for the whole season. He's been limited in practice, basically every single practice, and he's been questionable for the game. But then he says, "Yeah, I'm going to play," and the coaches say, "Okay, yeah, he's going to play." But then 2 weeks ago, we saw him get pulled out of the game and didn't return. But then last week we saw him play the full game, but not his usual number of snaps. And you could kind of tell when he's running, he doesn't have that juice that he had last season when we saw him last year. So I'm worried that Washington, they know they're not going to make the playoffs. Maybe another game or two, they're going to be like, okay, we definitely can't make the playoffs. So I'm worried that they might be like, all right, Gibson is obviously injured. We're not going to make the playoffs. So let's just rest our second best player, because their best is Terry McLaurin. But they should just rest him. They might put him on IR, and then he's going to miss like 3 or 4 weeks because they want to, make sure he's healthy. So if you have Gibson, try to get McKissick on your team so that at least if Gibson gets, put on IR for a few weeks, then you could put in McKissick and he'll be the lead back. But if you don't have McKissick and you can't get him, maybe try to trade Gibson if you have him, because this shin injury doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon. So, but if you have McKissick, definitely try to keep him, because he could be a starter in a few weeks, if Gibson really can't go.
Mm-hmm. I haven't said this guy's name since like 2018. David Johnson. We're talking about David Johnson, the running back.
Yeah, we are.
Wow, I have not said his name in a while. Is he can't be trending anywhere. The only way he could go is up. The only way he could go is up.
Yeah, he has to be trending up. He can't trend down. I think obviously he's not going to be a top 10 guy. He's not going to be a top 15 or 20 guy. I'm just saying, I picked him up in one of my leagues. It's a 12-team league. And like I said, I always go wide receiver heavy. My wide receivers in that league are Hopkins, Hill, and Jamar Chase. Now, my running backs are not very good. I had Chris Carson, but he got hurt. So I'm really pretty thin at running back. I also have Miles Sanders, Elijah Mitchell, Khalil Herbert in that league. So I'm always, changing up that running back position. So I picked up David Johnson because he could be a possible running RB2 because of the, Mark Ingram leaving to go to the Saints. So we're going to see him get a little bit more usage. They're talking that he might be a little bit more in a featured role with Mark Ingram gone. And it also helps that Tyrod Taylor is there, so they should be able to move the ball down the field more. So I'm not saying if you're in a 10-team league, you're not even touching this guy. If you're in a 12-team league, depending on your situation, you might want to pick him up. Maybe even you might not even need him. And in a 14-team league, you're definitely picking up if nobody has him already.
I'm intrigued by this next guy because I do have him in my 12-person league, Robert Woods. Now, his partner, Cooper Kupp, is just taken every single reception you could possibly have. No one's covering Cooper Kupp. I would have thought by now they would have to throw to Woods or anybody else. But no, it's just Cooper Kupp the whole time. And no one has any problem with the Rams just using him the whole time. So what do we do
right
with the sideshow of Robert Woods?
Yeah, like you said, it's kind of frustrating because Kupp is on pace to be the number one fantasy receiver, like have the most fantasy points in a single season in fantasy football history. So he's on pace to just obliterate everybody else in his path. And it's because, like you said, they just don't, I guess they just don't feel like they want to cover him. I don't know. Like they feel like maybe that's the game that they're going to go to, like Woods and Deshaun Jackson and Van Jefferson, and not think about Kupp. But no, every time Stafford's looking for a play, he goes to Kupp. But if you have Woods, I think he's trending up because, okay, so for somebody to have the best fantasy football season ever is kind of unlikely. Now, Kupp is on that pace right now, but you got to think at some point
Hopefully,
soon, these teams are going, they have to, like you can't watch the tape and think of anybody else on the team. Like I don't understand what you're game planning for if you're not game planning to stop him. So like it's going to get to the point, whether it's this week against Houston or next week against Tennessee, it's going to get to the point where Robert Woods within the next 2 games is going to have a really good game. So if you have Woods, stay patient. I know it's really frustrating that every game it's just Cooper Kupp that gets the 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, but stay patient. start Robert Woods this week, next week, and most likely moving forward because they're going to have to go to Woods at some point.
And what's frustrating is like I probably drafted Woods over Cup in the draft. And that's what sucks the most.
Yeah, that's the worst part.
Yeah. It's like
That is the worst part.
if you're a defense right now, I would just triple team Cup and just like we were texting about this. Like just see what happens when they go to Woods. If he has like a
Yeah.
2 or 3 touchdown game, fine. Okay, now you can't triple team him. But I just want to see. Like
Yeah.
the Texans got nothing to lose. They
Yeah.
might as well do it. I don't know.
I know, like, come on, they better. They know they're probably going to lose this game, so they better just. If I was the defensive coordinator, I'd be like, all right, we are not going to lose if it's Cooper Kupp beating us. Like, I'm going to do like if they're going to win, go ahead, go to like Van Jefferson, Deshaun Jackson, Robert Woods, whatever. I'm not letting Cooper Kupp beat us. Like that's what I would say. But we'll see.
It's not like the Bucks where they have like a wide receiver 1 at like every like they have Antonio Brown, then they got Mike Evans, and they got Chris Godwin, and then they had like Gronkowski when they were there. So like there's multiple people you can't double team them. But like Robert Woods isn't that great of a receiver to be like the wide receiver 1. So like I don't know, test it out. Let's move on to 2 more guys that are on the same team, different positions though. The Broncos, Cordell Sutton and Javonte Williams. Now Javonte Williams I think he had his biggest game of the year against the Browns, right? So you had picked him before to go off. He goes off the week after, of course. Of course.
I know, that always happens.
Always happens. So let's talk about Cordell Sutton first. Is he trending upward or trending down?
He's trending down, not a whole lot. He's only trending down a little now. The reason is because a lot of you know Jerry Jeudy is coming back this week, and they're playing the Washington football team. Horrible secondary, giving up the most points to almost every position: quarterback, wide receiver, running back. So obviously you're starting Sutton and Jeudy if you have them, but because of Jeudy coming back from injury, I do think Courtland Sutton is trending down a little bit. Maybe try to trade him. I'm just not a big fan of Courtland Sutton. I think he's a great receiver, but in terms of fantasy, he doesn't have the consistency that I want. Sometimes he has some 5-point games and sometimes he has 20 points. And plus the fact that I just don't trust Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater, whichever one plays quarterback, but I just don't trust them. So, but then moving on to Javonte Williams, I think he's trending up. Now it's becoming increasingly clear that Javonte Williams is the starting running back for this team moving forward. Now, next year, he's probably going to have a big year, but throughout the rest of this year, I think his role is going to increase. We saw it with Jonathan Taylor last year, DeAndre Swift last year, rookie running backs, and I think it's trending in that direction because Melvin Gordon, he has these games. Last game, he had, I think, 8 carries, but he only had 18 yards. And Javonte Williams is way more productive, and he had that passing or receiving touchdown. So you could just tell how the trend is going. That's why I picked him 2 weeks ago against the Raiders. I thought they would run the ball a lot. I thought they would be ahead in that game. Turns out they weren't. So maybe this week against Washington, he has a great game. But I think moving forward, it's good to have Javonte Williams on your team. I don't think he's an every week starter, but depending on the matchup, you could throw him in your RB2 spot. And definitely if somebody on your team has a bye, you could throw him in there.
Beautiful. I actually have Melvin Gordon in my 12-man, and I've literally seen him just go down and down and down in production. And I could tell it was happening because he was holding on by like some late touchdowns or goal line touchdowns, and that would be like the majority of his points.
Yep.
But other than that, he was not producing at all. Like his yards per carry was awful. So I saw it coming. Let's move on to our fantasy strategies segment of the podcast. Now, these are strategies you can implement right now and what John is doing to be in first place for all 4 or 3 of his leagues. So you want to listen up for these strategies. This one is talking about injured players, I believe. Tell me more about this. I'm trying to read it as I'm like telling it to the people.
So the first strategy I have is it's basically I'm saying now is the time time to extend a trade package to guys in your league that have some injured players. Now, a lot of you are saying, well, why are you trying to trade for an injured player? Well, he's going to probably come back in a couple weeks, and I'm going to talk about some guys. But what I'm going to say is I think you should try to trade for these guys that are injured, but be careful not to give too much away. And I'll talk about that in a second. So we know Saquon Barkley got hurt. He's expected to return next week in week 9. He does have a week 10 bye, so they might hold him out and give him until week 11. And then David Montgomery, we saw he's been out. He's expected to come back next week in week 9. He also has a week 10 bye, so they might hold him out until week 11. Christian McCaffrey, we see the Panthers team struggles without him. He's expected to come back next week in week 9. Kittle, we saw him go on IR. He's expected to return in week 9 as well. And then maybe DK Metcalf with Russell Wilson expected to return in week 10. So these are some guys that are returning within the next 2 or 3 weeks that you could definitely extend a trade offer for. Now, the guys that have them, these injured players, they might be willing to trade away these guys because there is that risk of re-injury. And that's why I don't want you to give too much away for these players. A guy like David Montgomery, I wouldn't give too much away because there is always that chance of re-injury. But not only that, the Chicago Bears have really found something in Khalil Herbert, and they really, really like him. Even when Damian Williams came back from the COVID list last week, they still gave Khalil Herbert, I think, over 10 carries, and he had over 90 yards against the Buccaneers, which is a tough team to run on. So I think even when Montgomery comes back, they like Khalil Herbert, they like Damian Williams out of the backfield. And I think Montgomery doesn't get as many touches as he did before. Plus, this offense is really struggling with Justin Fields. But if you can get David Montgomery at a really cheap cost, I would get him. But I would focus on these other guys. Saquon, it doesn't seem like Booker is at all, a threat to his carries. CMC, Hubbard is definitely not a threat to his carries because this Panthers team knows that they need to give McCaffrey the ball 20 times a game if they want a chance to win. And then Kittle, there's nobody really, contending with him. Ross Dwelley is not even a factor. So definitely Kittle, you could definitely trade and he'll be a tight end 1. And then DK, we saw with Lockett. Lockett's been struggling with Geno Smith and even DK has also. He only had 2 catches last game. One of them was an 84-yard touchdown. But so these are some guys that you could trade for. Now, see if you could talk to the team that they might need a running back. If you're taking one of their running backs, they might need a tight end or a receiver. See what their team needs and see if you can extend an offer to them for these injured players. But also, don't give up too much because there is that chance of re-injury. And be careful of the backup situation with Montgomery because he might not be the lead workhorse back when he returns. So, Jared, do you have any of those guys in any of your leagues, or are you trying to, would you trade for any of them?
I actually was thinking about this recently. I do have Saquon. I'm keeping him. A lot of upside.
Right.
A lot of upside with him, especially with the Giants, where it doesn't seem like anyone is being a star player like that would take carries or touches away from Barkley. But I was actually looking at Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, that Browns running back duo. One of them, I know,
Right.
I think Kareem Hunt's out for a lot longer, like another 7 weeks.
Right.
But I was looking at Nick Chubb, maybe someone be willing to release him. But like you said, Dearness Johnson, he came in that Thursday night game. Granted, it was only 1 game, but he did really well. So it's possible, Chubb, they slowly bring him back into the offense. Maybe Johnson out touches him for, 2 or 3 games when Chubb comes back.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a possibility.
So you have on here, add Colts defense. Why is that?
So each week I talk about these streaming defenses, but I want to mention it every week. Last week on Saturday, when we released this podcast, I told you guys pick up the Bengals defense if you have an open roster spot because they play the Jets in week 8. So I did that in a couple of my leagues because I had the open roster spot. I have the Bengals starting against the Jets with Mike White starting at quarterback. So hopefully you guys listen to me and you didn't have to waiver for them come Tuesday night or worry about somebody picking them up or wavering for them. So I want you to add the Colts defense right now And it's actually going to be good for 2 weeks because they played the Jets in week 9, which is at home for Indianapolis. And now we know their defense hasn't been great, but it's the Jets, and it's probably Mike White or Joe Flacco going to be starting in that game. And then in week 10, they're home against the Jaguars. So the Colts defense is a good streaming option for the next 2 weeks. You don't have to worry about them, getting a different defense in week 10. You just get them now, pick them up if you have the open roster spot. You don't have to worry about anybody else picking them up in waiver on Tuesday or getting them before you in free agency on Wednesday. So pick them up if you have the open roster spot, and you could start them against the Jets in week 9 and against the Jaguars in week 10. I did that in one of my leagues this week.
Beautiful. This next one, looking ahead to next week's buys, you have a couple teams, a couple players on there that have some good matchups.
Right. So, like we've been saying about the bye weeks, I just wanted you guys to look ahead, always look ahead to the next week, because you want to be able to pick up your replacements before it comes Tuesday for the waiver. So, just a couple teams on bye in week 9 is the Bucks, the Washington football team, the Lions, and the Seahawks. So there's not that many great players that you probably have on your team. Maybe you have, Brady on your team. Now, if you have Brady on your team, which I have him in one of my 12-team leagues, and I don't have a backup quarterback in that league, but I'm going to drop a player and I'm going to pick up a quarterback, and I'm going to pick up Derek Carr. He's playing the Giants in week 10 or week 9. And the reason I like Carr is because he has a bye this week. So he gets to game plan. He gets Waller back probably. He gets Jacobs back probably. And he gets to game plan for the Giants in week 9. So picking up a quarterback now, I don't have to wait for Tuesday or Wednesday for somebody else to waiver for Carr if they have, Heineke or Goff or Geno Smith, which they probably don't, but I don't have to worry about somebody else picking up Carr because I'm going to have him now. So always thinking a week ahead if you have that open roster spot to pick up the guy. Some wide receivers, if you have Godwin or Mike Evans or DK, you might want to pick up T.Y. Hilton. He's playing the Jets in week 9, and he was doing good. It doesn't seem like he's going to play this week, but that's a good matchup with the Jets. And then I wanted to also say the Giants receivers should all be rostered. I see a lot of you guys asking me on Patreon and commenting on TikTok, should I pick up Galladay? Should I keep Tony? Should I pick up Shepard? All 3 of those guys should be rostered, because if any one of them plays and the other guys don't, then that guy's going to be targeted a lot. We saw it a couple weeks ago with Shepard. He was the only guy. Tony and Galladay didn't play, and Shepard was targeted 14 times, and Dante Pettis was targeted 10 times. And then the week before that, Shepard and Galladay didn't play, and Tony played against Dallas, and he had so many fantasy points. So we don't know which one of these receivers is going to be available any given game, but if they're the only one available, they're going to be targeted a lot. So definitely roster all them in your leagues.
Amazing. We're going to keep it moving with our last segment, and it's the week 8 predictions. There's a lot of subcategories, as you guys know. If you had watched the podcast before, we have games that John loves, games that John hates, impact injuries for this week, and his weekly picks and must sits. So let's start off with games that you love, John.
Yes. So the games that I love, 3 of them I love, the Titans and the Colts. If you have any guys in this game, you should try to start them. Tannehill's a good streaming option. Wentz is also a good streaming option. Obviously, Derrick Henry, you're starting. Julio Jones, we don't know if he's going to play yet. A.J. Brown, you're starting after last week. He had a good game against the Chiefs. And then Michael Pittman, you're starting. Jonathan Taylor, of course. And Mo Alley-Cox, who's had 4 touchdowns, I think, in his last 4 games, is also a decent streaming option at tight end for this week, although I like Higbee and Hunter Henry a little bit more. The second game, Cowboys versus Vikings. And this should be a high-scoring game. It's a Sunday night game, which should be fun to watch. Kirk Cousins, good streaming option. I told somebody to start Cousins over Rodgers this week. Rodgers only had 15 fantasy points, so I think Cousins will do better than that. And then, obviously, Jefferson, Thielen, you're starting. Dalvin Cook, expect a good game from him. Zeke, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup is probably returning this week. So expect big things from all of them if you have them. And then the last one, Giants versus Chiefs. It's a Monday night game, but I think Caleb posted on our Instagram how bad the Chiefs defense has been. So Daniel Jones, possible streaming option, Darius Slayton, Tony, and Shepard, Galladay, any of those receivers that play. Now it stinks that we probably won't know until Monday night if they play. So you'll have to make your lineup decision Sunday and just hope for the best. But the Giants and Chiefs should be high scoring game. Don't worry about Mahomes. If you have him, still start him. Same with Kelsey and Hill. You got to start them.
That's interesting. The Giants, most of their games are usually low scoring. So I'm interested.
Yeah, I think it's in Kansas City and it's a Monday night game, so it's possible that it could be low scoring. But I just think the Chiefs defense has been so bad, and I think their offense is probably going to get back on track. Now the Giants defense looked good last week against the Panthers, but it's nothing special. We gave up a lot of points to the Rams, so
yeah. Any pick for that one? Giants taking the dub?
No, I think the Chiefs are gonna win.
Dang. All right. Games that you hate. Now this first one surprises me. You have Bucks
Really?
Saints as a Bucks Saints as the game that you hate. Why? I feel like that's
Yeah.
like high powered offense against Alvin Kamara.
I think I think you're right about that. The Saints only have Kamara, but that's a part of the reason why I think it's going to be super low scoring. If you're the Buccaneers and you watch the Monday night game between the Saints and the Seahawks, isn't it like pretty darn obvious what you do to stop the Saints? Like, I think Kamara had 10 catches for 119 yards or something and a touchdown, and then another like 60 yards rushing. Like, and nobody else even had like 50 total yards or more than like 2 catches at all. So like, it's obvious that you need to stop Kamara. So like, I just see the Saints not scoring a lot of points, but I also see the Saints defense playing really well because don't forget, this game is in New Orleans. So I really don't think Brady's a great start this week. I know it's tough. I'm starting Brady in my 12-team league because I don't really have that many other options, but I kind of like Kirk Cousins more than Brady this week, maybe Tannehill more than Brady. I still would start Brady over Daniel Jones, even though Jones is playing the Chiefs. But just be careful about Brady. Be careful about Evans. Be careful about all these pass catchers. I would start Gronk this week. He's probably going to be back. I would start Gronk, probably still start Godwin. And just be careful about Brady and be careful about, obviously, if you have Kamara. I have Kamara in our 6-team league and I'm still starting him. But I wouldn't start anybody but Kamara on the Saints. And other than Godwin and Gronk and Brady and Evans and Fournette, I wouldn't consider starting anybody else. I wouldn't start. The defenses are even sketchy, but if you have them, you could probably still start them. But I just think that's going to be a low scoring game, in New Orleans with, their defense is going to play well and they know they're not going to score that many points against the Bucks. So
very interesting.
And then the second game is the 49ers and Bears. Might be a little obvious. 49ers been struggling. Garoppolo had a really bad game. There was weather in last week in San Francisco, but they had a bad game against the Colts. But I think the Bears, they obviously got obliterated by the Buccaneers. I think this is going to be a low scoring game, and I don't think either team is going to score a lot of points. So if you have anybody on the Bears or the 49ers, try to sit them unless their name is Deebo Samuel.
We're going to talk about Deebo Samuel right now with some impact injuries. I have 2 of these guys. So I'm going to be listening very closely to what you say, John.
Wow. Okay. So like you said, Deebo Samuel, he has a calf strain. Now, we've seen this pop up with so many guys. We saw Dak Prescott has a calf strain now. Garoppolo had a calf strain, missed a game. Kittle has a calf strain, got put on IR. So we don't really know what's going on around the league with these calf strains, but it seems like Deebo Samuel, who didn't practice Wednesday, we don't know if he's going to play this game. My guess is that he does play, and if he does, you're going to have to start him because of how much volume he's gotten. But just monitor that injury throughout the weekend. And if he doesn't play, it's anybody's guess if they finally get Ayuk involved. But we'll see if they get Ayuk involved. I probably still wouldn't start Ayuk just because of the uncertainty there. But if you have Debo, just be careful about that injury situation. And a big name, Dak Prescott, like I just said, he has a calf strain. Now, they had a bye last week, so it's a little concerning that he's still not, or he was limited in practice, and it's concerning that he might not play Sunday night. And my guess, if I had to guess right now, as of Friday morning, you guys are seeing this on Saturday, but my guess is that Dak might not play. I don't know if he's going to play because they know they're going to win this division. Second place doesn't even have a even 500 record, so they know they're 5-1. They're going to win this division, and I think they might hold out Dak for this game. Now that would be a detrimental to all their pass catchers, and you would have to start other guys. So hopefully they roll Dak out before the Sunday 1 o'clock games if they do rule him out. But just be careful about Dak's injury with the calf. If you guys didn't know about it, try to monitor that. Another guy is Gronkowski. I talked about him before. He's probably returning this week. If you have him, you're going to start him. Another one, Nick Chubb. We talked about that before. They might try to ease him back in. Dearness Johnson had a really good game against the Broncos, so they're probably going to give him the opportunity. Somebody can't play that well and not get another opportunity the next game. And then Julio Jones didn't practice Wednesday, I don't think, limited Thursday. I don't know if he's going to play. My guess is that he probably won't play this weekend, which would be an upgrade for A.J. Brown this week. So monitor Julio's injury moving forward.
I'm looking at QBs as we speak. I think I'm going to pick up Daniel Jones since I have Dak Prescott, and my backup is Sam Darnold, who carried me through the first 3 or 4 weeks and now is just terrible.
Right. Well, and that's in a 12-team league?
Yeah.
So who else is available other than Jones?
You got Roethlisberger, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith. Freaking Face ID wouldn't work. Jimmy Garoppolo and Matt Ryan, and then Tua, Tyler Heineke. Not too much.
Yeah, I would say Tua's a decent streamer, but not this week against the Bills because last time they played the Bills, they got shut out. Even though Tua did lead the entire league in fantasy points last week in terms of QB, but I think if Dak doesn't play, I think that's a good pickup. Throwing Jones in on Monday night, and it actually works to your favor because if Dak isn't ruled out until an hour and a half before the game when they release their inactives, at least you have Daniel Jones that plays Monday night, so it's a good option. You could wait until the last second. You don't have to decide before the 1 o'clock games.
Very true. Very true. All right. Weekly picks and must sits. Those are our final 2 topics. Now, if you don't, usually John has these picks, but if he doesn't and he just has a wide range of players that he hasn't narrowed down yet, you can catch the weekly picks and the must sits on his live on TikTok at noon Eastern Standard Time. So, John, let's get into the weekly picks and the must sits.
Right. So, again, I haven't 100% picked out my number 1 weekly pick this week, so I can't really tell you guys yet, but I will tell you some of the guys that I think will have good games or that I'm considering for my weekly picks. The first one, Jared, you'll probably be happy with this one. It's actually Robert Woods. I think, like we said, it's going to come to the point where the Texans might really try to cover Kupp. And the Rams know this. The Rams aren't dumb. They're a pro football team. They know, okay, we've been going to Kupp a lot. Now, that's not saying next game, let's not go to Kupp, but maybe let's script a few more plays in the playbook for Robert Woods so that if a team like the Texans comes out and they double team Kupp, we have some extra scripted plays for Robert Woods. So Woods could be one of my weekly picks this week. If you have him, you're definitely starting him because it's the Texans and it should be a good game for the Rams. Second one is Michael Pittman against the Titans, the Colts receiver. We saw him have a great game in the bad weather against the 49ers. And T.Y. Hilton didn't play in that game. Doesn't seem like he's going to play in this game. Paris Campbell is still on IR. So the Colts, their best receiver and main guy to throw to is Michael Pittman. They still have Zach Pascal. They have Mo Alley Cox, they've been touchdown dependent, and they have Jonathan Taylor running the ball. But if the Titans, usually the Titans and Colts is a high scoring game, and the Titans have A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry, they should be able to score points. So I think if the Colts want to throw the ball and score points, it's going to Pittman or it's going to Jonathan Taylor. So I think Pittman, if you have him, you're definitely trying to get him into your lineup this week. My third one is Chris Godwin. I think he's going to have a good game, and I'll talk about why I think so in a few minutes when I get to my must-sits. But I think Godwin's going to have a good game, had a good game last week against the Bears. And I think with Antonio Brown still out, Godwin should have a good game. And with Gronk coming back, you're still starting Gronk, but he might be eased in a little bit. But you have to start Gronk because of his touchdown. He's just great at getting touchdowns. And then Javonte Williams, if you have him, you're going to try to start him this week. And the reason is because he's been trending up, Melvin Gordon trending down, and they're playing Washington. So when you see a running back have a good game, it's usually because their team was leading during the game and they could run the ball more. So I expect the Broncos at home to be leading this game against the Washington football team, which means that it should open up a few more carries for Javonte Williams. So might be one of my weekly picks, might not, but I think he's going to have a decent game this week. I'm going to have to monitor that situation and other injury situations going into Sunday. But those are the four guys. I know it's not a whole big list, but hopefully you guys can tune in on Sunday for my live to get my three picks. But those are some guys that I like this week.
There's two players that John will usually text me about because they have crazy plays. And it's like every week. First one is Ja'Marr Chase. I usually just get Chase is unreal text. And then the next one I get is Cooper Kupp is amazing. Another 30-point game. Those two players, you'd think after this long, you're like, all right, they're going to cover him. He's going to have a down game. And they just keep getting better. It's unreal.
Yeah, so it was kind of funny, and I'm trying to process this and make better predictions for the future. But okay, remember, so Ja'Marr Chase this past week against Baltimore, we were shocked because Baltimore had always beat the Bengals to the ground, right? So we didn't think that the Bengals would go into Baltimore and put up 40 points like they did. And Ja'Marr Chase had over 200 receiving yards and had a great game, right? And so I did not think he was going to have a great game, but I'm trying to process this and reflect on what I got wrong, which was Ja'Marr Chase. I did not think he was going to have a great game, but it kind of reminds me, remember that game? And it was a while ago. You might not remember it, but I think it was in 2018 when we were still at school in Global Village, and Alvin Kamara, who I think maybe that was the week I told you about Kamara, but he was a rookie. And I was like, this guy's going to win Rookie of the Year because he's just been playing amazing. And he was kind of playing like Ja'Marr Chase was. He was getting a lot of catches and he was doing a lot. And now, so this was the game. I remember the game vividly. It was the Saints going to the Rams. And it was when Jared Goff, Todd Gurley was like MVP candidate. It was only like the fourth or fifth game of the season. But Alvin Kamara was the focal point of the Saints offense. And I think within the first 5 minutes of the game, Kamara took, I think the Rams kicked it off. It was a touchback, and the Saints handed off to Kamara, and Kamara took it 80 yards for the touchdown. And Kamara was so fast and skinny, but now he's bigger. He's worked on his strength. But it kind of reminds me of that. When these rookies, these young guys are playing so well, sometimes it really doesn't matter what the matchup is, because at that point we would think of the Rams and we would be like, all right, this is going to be low scoring. How are the Saints going to score points? They have Michael Thomas, but Alvin Kamara is a rookie. They have Mark Ingram, which they used a lot. And the Rams run defense is really good. Plus it's in LA. And now we saw Kamara break out of that mold, get an 80-yard touchdown. I think he had 20 or 30 fantasy points that game. And it reminds me, this game with Chase against the Ravens, of that. When guys are playing this good, these young guys, they break that mold of okay, the Ravens always beat the Bengals. We know what's going to happen. Ja'Marr Chase is going to be locked up by Humphrey. But he actually broke out of that mold. And it's so fun to watch, the momentum that momentum is a real thing, and the Bengals have such good momentum and such good connection between Burrow and Chase. So that just reminded me, Chase blowing up against the Ravens reminded me of Alvin Kamara blowing up in a bad matchup against the Rams a few years ago. So just moving forward, realizing that these rookies, the NFL revolves around these rookies, and it's just so fun to watch them play. And they're still hard to predict, and they're really good players, even though they're young. So it'll be interesting moving forward to see how that affects predictions and other matchups.
Yeah, the fact that he's a rookie, I know we talk about this with quarterbacks where like the sophomore slump where, the first year maybe they do really, really well and defenses really just haven't had the experience against that quarterback. And then you go into the sophomore season and you're like, okay, we've played him before. Now we know his tendencies. We know what he's going to do, because it's way different to watch it on film than to actually play. So it's more of like,
Right.
Ja'Marr Chase is a rookie. No one's going to double team him as a rookie. They're just not going to give him that sort of like respect yet. But they've played T. Higgins before. They've played Tyler Boyd before. So they're going to be more like, their eyes are going to be more attracted to them and be like, oh, we'll put a veteran corner on Ja'Marr Chase. He's a rookie. Like, we'll shut him down. Like, and then they see that he just is a freak athlete, and he's definitely not acting like a rookie. He's like top 5 in just normal receivers when you don't even like narrow it down to rookies. Incredible. All right, let's move to our last one, just for time purposes. Must sits. Do you have any, or have you just narrowed it down to a good chunk of players?
Yeah, I've just narrowed it down to a few. I also have 4 for my must sits, but again, these might not be my must sits. So you have to come back on Sunday during my TikTok live or join the Patreon to get my weekly picks and my must sits. So none of these are final, the guys I listed for my weekly picks, or these that I'm about to say for my must sits, but they're possibilities. I'm just trying to give you guys my thoughts behind these games. The first one, I'm sorry to say it, Jared, but Jalen Hurts against the Lions.
You told me this the last podcast.
I'm not saying. Okay, so let me clarify. I don't think you should probably not sit Jalen Hurts. Now, I'm just saying I don't think he's going to have as good of a game as he usually does, because like I said on the podcast on Thursday, or that we recorded on Tuesday, our podcast with all 4 of us, I said that I think the Lions are going to win this game against the Eagles. They're at home. They had a great game against the Rams. They've come close this year, and I think they win against the Eagles. Now, I don't think you should sit Hurts. He's probably not going to be one of my must sits, but I'm saying lower your expectations, because he does have a high floor with his rushing and rushing touchdowns. But I think because of that Lions defense, Dan Campbell wants to win this game so bad. He wants to get a win so bad for these guys, and they're going to be playing their hearts out. So just be careful about Hurts. It depends on your situation, but you're probably still starting him. I mean, Jared, I'm only saying sit Hurts because you have Burrow available to pick up, and you have Ja'Marr Chase. So like, that would be a great stack to put Burrow. If you think Chase is going to have a good game against the Jets, then why not throw Burrow in there? But I don't know. I would temper your expectations for Hurts. The second guy is Terry McLaurin against the Broncos. I don't know if he's going to be one of my must sits yet, but he did have a great game last week. This week against the Broncos, it's in Denver, and they have good corners. They've been tough to throw against, the Broncos have. So I think this is probably going to be a lower scoring game. I don't know if McLaurin has another blow up game, but he might be one of my must sits, might not. The third one is Mike Evans versus the Saints, and this is what I wanted to talk about when I talked about Chris Godwin. And a lot of you guys are going to be super surprised by this, because last week I said Mike Evans was my number 1 weekly pick. He had his best game of the season, 3 touchdowns, over 30 fantasy points. Now, the reason I'm saying you should probably sit him this week is because he's matched up with Marshawn Lattimore. And last year against Marshawn Lattimore, I don't think he had more than 10 or 15 fantasy points in each game he played. He played 2 games against the Saints. So I don't think that Mike Evans is going to have a great game now. Antonio Brown is most likely going to be out, which should lead a few more targets in Mike Evans' direction. But I think that's even more of a reason to start Chris Godwin and Gronk, because Lattimore has had Mike Evans' number. He knows how to play him. They've always been fighting back and forth. I think 2 years ago, they like got ejected, both of them. So it's going to be a dogfight between them, but he should be on Mike Evans the whole game. And I don't think Evans is going to have a great game. So he might be one of my must sits. He probably will. So I'm saying if you're deciding between Evans and somebody else, choose the somebody else this week, because Evans' ceiling is capped tremendously because of his matchup with Lattimore. And then the last one is Tyler Lockett. I've been talking about these Seahawks receivers. If you have DK Metcalf, you're probably still starting him because you probably don't have any other options. But if you're in a 6-team league like us, I don't know who has DK in our league, but I would probably sit him because we're in a 16 league and there's a lot of other options. But Tyler Lockett, even in a 12-team league, I would probably sit. He only had one catch last week, and it's becoming really frustrating with Geno Smith at quarterback, even though the Jaguars are a pretty good matchup. It's just too hard to trust Lockett. He could get a 40-yard touchdown, but the chances are very slim with Geno Smith at quarterback. So be careful about that situation with the Seahawks. But those are my must sits. None of them are final. Maybe Mike Evans is probably the most confident out of those four, but definitely come back Sunday, because maybe none of them will be part of my must sits. I still have to do more research leading into the weekend based on the injuries and injury reports that become available.
Yeah, and if you can't make it to the live, the only other way you can get them is through the Patreon, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. But that Patreon, John will post his must sits, his weekly picks on the Patreon, so that you guys, if you can't make the live, you can just go there and look at it. So yeah, I'll leave that in the description. You can go watch it. But yeah, as we said before, your live is at noon on Sunday. And I think that's it. I mean, we post these every Saturday morning, so make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Go subscribe. Go follow us on Instagram and on TikTok at Dorm Debate Podcast. John, got anything else to say?
No, I just think, have a nice Halloween weekend, and I'll see you guys tomorrow morning on Halloween for Sunday live.
Are you gonna have any costume ready for Sunday?
I was thinking about it. I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna figure something out for the live because I have to be festive. I got to do something fun.
That would be cool. That would be cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you, John, for all the great advice. And we will see you guys next week.